Uh,
Yo, what is
yeah.
up? My name is Sarah and I am here to
Girlie.
talk all things body image, self-worth, relationships and dating. And I'm here to share a little bit about my journey to being myself and how much that's improved my life, and maybe it can improve your life too. So here we are. Pull up a metaphorical chair and let's chat. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah Self-Worth if you want to see what awkward antics I am up to in the real world. Otherwise, for now, this is Awkward Girlie. I'm the author of Stop Hating Dating, Start Being You. I need to stop with the upward inflection. This is my first time doing my podcast introduction, so I'm gonna faff it up a little bit, and that is totally fine. I'm trying to ease my way into it. So today I'm doing a podcast on how to be yourself. Actually, that's not even true. I took a step back from it and I was like, what even is being yourself? So here we are. A lot of the time in my content, I talk about just being yourself, and it's a common trope that comes up in a lot of dating advice and even self-worth advice, is to just be yourself, like that means something. And I wanted to talk about what that actually means today, because I've thought about this a lot, and when someone says just be yourself, a few things come up for me. Firstly, the things that come up are like, that's a bad idea, or what version of me should I be then? Because I am 55 different versions of myself in a day, depending on who I'm around and in what context I'm in. So just be yourself is super annoying dating advice that I used to get all the time, particularly because I didn't think being myself was good enough. But also it just doesn't really mean anything. So I wanted to talk about what I think being yourself actually means, and how you can be yourself when there's multiple versions of you that exist. So firstly, I just wanted to say, like, how fucking weird would it be if there weren't multiple versions of us? Like, if we just came around showing up as the same version of us in every single context, like, that would be fucking weird. So I just wanted to say that, because you're going to be a different version of yourself around your mentor than you are with your mum, than you are with your best mate, than you are with a work colleague, that you're trying to hide your sick leave from. Like, you're going to be a different version of yourself, and it would be strange if you weren't. So this episode really is about that, even for me, because this is my first podcast that I'm recording of my own podcast, and this is a different context for me to show up in, and what version of me do I bring to the table is something that I have to think about, and I'll get into it in a minute of how I think this works. So I've come up with a little concept that I wanted to share today that has kind of helped me figure out when I'm being myself and when I'm stretching myself, and when stretching myself is actually a good thing, and when stretching myself can actually be not so good. Particularly in the context of relationships and spending time with other people, that's when you want to hold on to yourself as much as you can, unless you're trying to grow, and that's exactly why this concept is a podcast topic, because it's not that simple for me anyway. When I think about being myself, values comes up for me, and I guess this is because I've done a lot of self-help exercises. I've done the Mark Manson self-help books, not just his books but his workbooks. He's actually got like the Subtle Art School online, so I've done a bunch of that. I've also done a bunch of therapy, and even in my therapy around my eating disorder and body image stuff, they talk about values. And so I just thought that would be a good concept to start with in explaining what I mean by how I'm being myself. And it can be super exhausting to be a different version of yourself that isn't aligned with your values. And your values shift over time. So this is when I say, like, who you are is in constant evolution. Like, I used to be vegetarian, and not just a flash in the pan either. Like, I was like vegetarian for 7 years or 9 years or something. Like, I even had a year of vegan where I tried to be vegan anyway. Got myself into a bit of a health problem there, and I'm not vegetarian anymore. So that's like a huge value that that has shifted of mine, and that was something around valuing my body, and also just how I fit into the wider world. So obviously our values shift over time, and I think it's really interesting when people talk about when someone's changed, and you'll hear like the old friend from high school that you run into, and they're like, oh, you've changed. Like they might say that behind your back, right? Like that's something that kind of comes up for me sometimes when I do show up in a different way than I have the last time I saw someone. And I think, oh, they're going to think I've changed. And that's actually not so bad, because when people say that, they don't know your full story, but they also aren't in the same place that you are right now. And that often happens with friendships, right? Like the people that I was friends with 15 years ago, I don't necessarily align with a lot of their values now. So it makes sense that we change and we have friendships fall off and friendships stick around longer when we have more aligned values. And the concept that I'll get into in a minute is going to probably shed some light on why there's some friends that you can still tolerate and some that you're like, nah, no time for you, buddy. This is actually really interesting. I'm realizing in real time that my notes are actually like a crutch, but at the same time proving to be not so helpful, because it's kind of trying to take me back in a direction when I'm actually going in a direction when I'm talking. So I might as well just keep doing that. So yeah, you're going to come across these people that are like, bro, you've changed. And that can be a good thing, right? So there's some people that are going to be super happy that your life is changing and evolving. And then there's going to be people that are just inconvenienced by you changing, because either they don't enjoy spending time with you anymore, which, by the way, isn't a bad thing. You're not here to just to be enjoyed by other people, right? You're meant to enjoy being around them as well. They either don't enjoy spending time with you anymore, they don't get what they used to get from you anymore, or you changing makes them have to think about their own actions, which can be uncomfortable, especially if they're not even aware of them or even thinking about changing in the first place. So people might be happy you changed, people might be inconvenienced by it, but either way, you're constantly going to be evolving, and being you isn't static. So if I were to look at my different parts about me on a range, I want to give it like an upper and lower limit. Oh my god, I'm so analytical. Like, is this an analytical brain thing? I don't know if I'm a bit autistic sometimes, honestly. So if I were to look at my behaviors or values on a range, let's just choose like health, right, as a value. Because that's one that I think is like topical for me right now. The upper end of my health is like, yeah, I'd be willing to spend $6,000 on a health retreat, right? Like that's the upper end. $10,000 on a health retreat, like probably gonna rather go traveling. Like, let's be honest, probably rather spend 10 grand towards a new car. Like that's if we're talking in monetary terms. Bottom end of my health spectrum is like, oh yeah, I would totally eat like 15 liters of ice cream in a week. Like if I was having like a super sweet treat moment, that is believable for me. Waffles, gonna spend some time vegging out, not hitting my exercise goals right now. That's at the bottom of my spectrum. Am I gonna go over that threshold and potentially harm myself physically? No. Am I going to go over that bottom end of the spectrum and do a shit ton of drugs? No, not within my range, right, of where I'm at on that health value. So the way I look at it is, we're going to naturally end up spending time with people who have more overlap with us in our values range, in that spectrum. And we're going to feel uncomfortable around people who are outside of our values spectrum or range. I'm going to call it a values range because I feel like that works. And spectrum is just too much of a clicky word right now, used for way too many things. So, live example, got a mate that I used to hang out with all the time. Hung out with them recently, and I was like, bro, I cannot keep up with you with the drinks. and I started drinking like 1 drink to his like 3 drinks. And when I say 1 drink to his 3 drinks, he'd had 6 drinks, and I was about like on my 2nd, and I'm like, I'm kind of calling it for the night. And that's when I realized like our spectrum of where we were sitting on that value right now had shifted considerably since we last hung out, which is cool. I can still totally hang out with this person. Am I gonna influence them a little bit by drinking a little bit less? Potentially. Are they gonna influence me a little bit and I might end up drinking a little bit more than I normally would? Potentially, because we're both at our edge of that values range. So I'd be stepping over the line a little bit and drinking 2 drinks when I normally would have 1 with dinner and that pretty much call it. And there might be like, oh, usually this would turn into a blowout night for me, but kind of rein it in a little bit because Sarah's here. So playing at our edges of our values range is really interesting, because that's usually when one person gets uncomfortable or one person gets stretched. And the way I'm looking at it now is stepping over that line into your discomfort zone, is that bringing you closer towards the kind of person you want to be, or is that bringing you away from the kind of person that you want to be? And it doesn't need to be that deep, right? If you're just hanging out with your friends, it's fine. But when you start talking about entering in relationships, or bringing new people into your life who you don't usually spend time with, like, this can completely change the trajectory of your life. So your values range is something that I like to live within when I talk about being myself, talk about being yourself. Are you staying within your values range? And if you're not, then you're kind of not being yourself. And do you have a decent feeling about that, or a decent reason to be doing that? Or is that feeling like uncomfortable? And there's been plenty of relationships in my past where I've stepped outside of my range, my values range, and I didn't even know that was a thing at the time. You date someone who partakes in illicit drugs, or you date someone who spends a lot of money on their health, and you end up doing the same thing. So that can be a good or a bad thing, and it does impact you. And if you're playing at your edges, it's important to think about, like, is that person being positively or negatively impacted by you? Are you being positively or negatively impacted by them? Are they likely to step outside of their edges to hang out with you? If they're not, like, are you going to feel resentment about that? Are you going to feel resentment about doing less of your things because they're not wanting to step over the fence a little bit and hang out on your side of things? And I guess that's what people talk about when they talk about compromise, right? Like, are you doing some of my stuff? Am I doing some of your stuff? And it can just be that you end up morphing into their world a little bit more than they morphed into yours. If you're happy for that to happen, sweet. If you think that, like, grass is greener on their side of the fence, sweet, go with it. We should be open-minded to these things, because that's how we can meet new people. That's how we can have new experiences. But we should also hold on to ourselves when we like who we are, or when we have a different direction or trajectory that we want to take than this person wants to take. So I guess being yourself isn't static. We should welcome the breadth of that full range so we can meet new people, we can be open to other experiences, but we should be aware of our current values range, and when we're stretching it, whether or not it's stretching in the direction that we want to be stretching in. I like to think that we spend more time with people that we have common ground with because we feel comfortable around them, and then we get to be more of ourselves around them because we're within that range and we feel comfortable in that range. When we're stretching ourselves, there's two sides to think of this, right? Like, you're stretching yourself because you're growing and it's positive to be around this person, or you're stretching yourself because you're getting uncomfortable and changing who you are. So there's both sides of looking at that. There's also the other way of looking at that is, like, if one person's stretching, then the other person's potentially falling, or at least having to do some work in helping that person stretch. So we can lend people some of our energy. I've got some people in my life right now who I'll make a conscious effort to spend time with them. Even though I know they're currently struggling, I think that they could probably benefit from spending some extra time in my energy. Hopefully they agree with that. Well, they keep hanging out with me, so they must do. But there's definitely people in my life who I feel the same about, right? Where I benefit from being around their energy. And I really hope they continue to keep spending time with me. And I do my best to not drag them down or negatively impact them. Well, I don't know if that concept kind of captures the idea of being yourself. I would love to hear about it in the comments if you disagree with this concept. And someone's knocking on my door, so that's it for me.
Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe.